certainly our Zen garden, Luna. First moon of the year, even though we crossed into it together last night. I was listening to the show. It was pretty fun. I was pretty goofy. But I appreciate everybody ringing in the new year with me. Right now it's 10:16 p.m. and we're already off to the races in 21. It was really cloudy earlier, so I was just waiting to see if it would clear. And here we go. We got some lovely waning gibbous moon on our hands at 90% illuminated exactly, so 10% in earthshine. Pretty hard for us to see, obviously, till it's about halfway, but know that there is region behind that darkness. Right now, coming up at 22 degrees apparent altitude. I'm just going to chill with y'all. Just a very relaxed night. I might play, I might talk, but for now, let's just listen to some tunes together and play some rarities tonight. Let's do Cruel Damn Heart.
I never had such a simple love before. I learned nothing from the back of the classroom. Oh, and now I'm dreaming for myself for the first time. I never loved such a simple life before. I heard that from the front of the universe, and now I'm wondering how it's doing its thing for me. Oh, would you cool down hard? Patterns, 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 patterns. Said you cool down hard. Oh, would you cool down hard? Patterns, patterns, patterns. Said you cool down. Oh, now I'm wondering why and how I've done for you. It's all for you. Fed and waited on my puppets on a string. Do you feel how I feel? Do you care what I feel? Vampires, samurais, dealing ways that would you cause your eyes to turn. Pattern before my eyes run. I told you, said you colors hard. But when you cruel damn hard, patterns, patterns, said you cruel damn
All right, little Cruel Damn Heart. Hopping in to say what's up to everybody in the chat and pull up the Moon Atlas as well. What's happening? I'll start at the top, actually. What's going on in Light and Dawn? And TJ, good morning. And NGC, how's it going? Great to see you. TJ, yep, caught you from the start. Hell yeah. Morning Star, what's going on? Hello, TBS and family. What is up? Mary, Taco Monday. No, Taco Friday. Tacos every day. All good. Cyber Sully. What's going on? Ellie Wynn. Great to see you. And who did I miss? I miss anybody? All right. Let me know if you're hanging out. Just a quick note on the moon. Like I said, 90% waning gibbous. Let's pull up this paint program and just note some regions. Right here. Toymanada, Tycho, Borealis, Kepler, Aristarchus, Copernicus. Let's see, Mare Nectaris? No, Mare Humorum, sorry. Mare Humorum. Mare Nubium. Mare Nectaris. Mare Tranquillitatis. Serenitatis. Mare Imbrium. Mare Frigoris. Sinus Iridum. Plato. Posidonius. Apennines. Alps. And others. All right, just a couple of notes. Really looking nice and crispy. Hopefully it'll stay like this for the next hour or so. I'm not going to do 3 hours tonight if I can help it, but let's do a nice watching our show, rolling in the new year together. What's up, Christian Druid 1313, chilling with Luna, exactly. And anybody else hanging out. Remember to hit that 4K and share the video with somebody that you appreciate. Let's do this other track from this old album. It's called Doing What You Want.
Over and over again. Seasons wheel, significance, circle shell waves, filled with fires, remorse. Hold my torch for the ones who want to live. Pour for the leaves and fly away. Tell me, man, do you want to just do the same? Kick down your photo to the looking glass rider, and it opened up my door, walking down that rabbit hole. Is it you I see there, high above the battle roar? Morning waits for no one. Oh, you're just a stranding wave on the edge of my frequency. Your particles misbehave and break in town binary. Your mind now has caught of age. The sequence is inside of me. Push your eyes down through the looking glass spiders and open up your hole, rocking down that rabbit hole. Is it you I see there, high above the battle roar? Morning waits for my goal. Is it you I see there?
All right, a couple songs. That was High Above the Battle Roar. Just hopping in here for a sec, say hi, and to point out this little region at the bottom. I love that it's called either Demon Axe, Demonics, but yeah, there's a crater called Demon Axe right there, and unless I'm absolutely crazy, no, that's not it, actually. Hold on. No, that's not correct. That's on the other side. So I think it's more like, I think it's Mare Oriental. That's probably what it is. Right, because the dark region over here, that is Grimaldi crater, or Mare. It's like a minor Mare. And then to the right of that, you got the brighter region, that's Burgius, or Burgius, Byrgius. And that is this very bright feature. So right underneath that would be, yeah, Montes Rook, Montes Cordillera, Lacus Veris, Lacus Autumni. There are a bunch of regions here that look like they could be what we're seeing, you know, is one of the lakes or mares from the side. Very cool little indent. I'll zoom in there for a second and check it out. Let me hide this. Yo, what's going on? Jedi Princess and Astrolabium, welcome. And Derek Mary, did I say hi? What's going on? Let me know if I missed you. Great to see the crew tonight. First day of the new year. Already rolling into the second one in about an hour. Feeling really relaxed today. Not really hungover, but just, getting through today. And it's a Friday that finally actually feels like Friday. So let's do Prism Dagger. All right, little prism dagger there. So I've zoomed into this region, hopping in to say what's up to Vicky, what's going on, 921 Acacia, and D. Peterson, welcome. Let's look at these regions close up for the moment. I feel like it's going to get hazy, so, and also tomorrow and the day after is supposed to be cloudy. So figured let's go live tonight and enjoy the moon on the first day of this year. So yeah, here I was zoomed in on Burgius. Not that. Where's my paint? Turn this on. So Burgius right there. And then seeing this kind of, it's ever so subtle, but because the rest of it is so perfectly circular in a way, you see this cut, this indent. So I feel like, I'm just looking at this one more time, I really feel like this is Montes Rook or Montes Cordillera. But I feel like Montes is mountains, not Mare. And this looks like more like a, actually perhaps it's a mountain range that we're seeing. I'm trying to follow this exactly right. So Burgius to the south. Mare Oriental, maybe? Yeah, it could be that. So one of those regions creating that nice notch, a rare feature to see. All right, so let's zoom around just a little bit more. It's looking nice. Exactly, TJ chatting from the future on Jan 2nd. Let's look at, all right, Tycho is right here. Looking very, very nice and prominent. Greens and blues abound. What can we notice? I mean, again, really this two parallel ray system coming off to the left. Is that more fireworks? Crazy. Or just a truck. Yeah, really interesting. One day maybe we'll understand how this was formed. Perhaps not. But it doesn't even have a name, actually. This is just one of those things that you only see when you start doing astronomy for yourself. I mean, I used to see it on moon photos, but never really understood or took notice of it. I was like, oh, that emanates from Tycho crater. It's part of it. But really, it's such an interesting phenomenon. Yo, what's going on, Lost Brooklyn? Easy E, what's happened? Happy New Year. Tycho, Central Peak. Kind of elevated region around here. Again, thinking about this electrically and how this surface could have been boiled by consistent electric shock or electric arcing at this point, and maybe traveling across the surface, a twin filament creating these raised regions, or just, yeah. Borealis crater, one that I always remember for some reason because it's the only thing that actually touches these rays. And this leads, I want to say this is Mare Nubium, if I'm not mistaken. So where's Tycho? Yeah, Mare Nubium. Mare Nubium has an interesting shape to it. You see it's got very interesting geometry. Not as clear-cut as Tycho, not as clear-cut as Serenity, for example, or Tranquility, but definitely geometric. Let me readjust this image and my squeaky table. So right there, we could draw a bit of a hexagon on it. But of course you're getting overlaps here. This itself is almost, started to realize this is like a bow tie or a dumbbell. I've never said those words before, but really that's a quick way to recognize it. But there's our hypotrochoid and the torus. So yeah. Let's zoom around a bit more. What's happening? Gladius Maximus, what's going on? D. Peterson says Tycho Brahe, Danish astronomer. Indeed, there's some very interesting stories about Tycho Brahe with his fake nose. He had a bronze nose, I think, or copper or gold nose was the old story, but I think it was really probably copper. And there are stories about Kepler. In Kepler's Somnium, he talks about visiting Tycho Brahe. And it's very, very interesting, those cats. So yes, Tycho crater or Tycho crater is named after Tycho Brahe. Same with Aristarchus, Kepler, and Copernicus, named after ancient astronomers as well. Right here, we can take a look at Copernicus. Copernicus, to me, is one of those just, again, amazing features to look at electric scarification, dendritic ridges, Lichtenberg patterns, and really try and create something like this in a laboratory using either ballistics or electric arcing discharge and see which comes closer would be the simplest experiment. Look at that getting nice and clear for us. But again, for me, it's so obvious because you have nested hexagons everywhere. This whole thing looks like a hexagon, almost looks like a cube, in fact. I'll show you this crazy, this is like those magic eye things a bit. Second, where's this? All right, so yeah, if you follow, let's say, okay, this is Copernicus. Let's draw the hexagon. To me, it almost looks like a rupee or a vertical diamond, vertical hexagonal diamond gem. But that in and of itself is kind of a cube shape, right? But Copernicus, but then look at this. So if you follow this line, look at this very interesting line right here. Maybe that's a little too far. There it is. And follow this line. That line. There's our cube. And it's kind of a recursive fractal cube. Yeah, once I sketch it once and then you can kind of pick it out yourselves. You see, like right here, very much that line. Easy to see those angles right there. Ballistics doesn't create craters like this. If you see impacts of bullets or missiles, they hit a surface like that, and then what happens is you get this kind of thing where the debris falls and it pushes in this way. So ballistic impacts coming at a slight angle would create these mound craters that lean this way. And if you had impacts coming directly to the surface of the moon, you're going to get these kind of anthill craters, again with debris falling out like that. What we do get on the moon instead are much more sharply defined craters that kind of look like this from the edge. They look like raised volcanoes or blisters. And that is due to, I think, because electrical arc discharge, when it hits a surface like this, where there's any liquid, it'll raise up like a blister, like a volcano, and induce this kind of elevation, like form it out of a surface, versus something the size of Copernicus, Copernicus is what, like 80 kilometers across? Can you imagine the object that would have to hit to create this, this impact? And then what happened? It hit, and then all these lines emanated once it hit. You know, that's the common understanding. For me, it makes much more sense if there was a persistent electric voltage right here that was moving across the surface of the moon, and then it hit a certain pocket of magnetism or synchronistic current, sympathetic current. I speak a little bit unknowledgeably about this, but I'm sure people who do electric discharge in a laboratory understand where there are certain parts where the arc will stop or start depending on a certain type of interaction. So I imagine if you have persistent electrical interaction at this point, then you can create an elevated mound with walls, a center peak, then all the electric dendritic action coming out this way. It seems way more logical. Now, I'm not ruling out impacts entirely, but over the years of looking at this, it makes so much more sense than every single crater on the moon was created by impact, or rather, most of them were created by electrical arc discharge. And some very, very small ones were created by tiny meteorites. All right, so that's Copernicus, named after Nicholas Copernicus. Lots of original principles of astronomy. Not to get into them too deeply, because I definitely have to do some research before I go into what Copernicus, Kepler, and Aristarchus did. But Aristarchus of Samos, I believe, was probably the earliest of them all. And I don't think he's the one who discovered Aristarchus crater, but they probably just named it after him. But Aristarchus here, unbelievable feature. I've talked about this many times, probably my favorite feature on the moon. But Aristarchus Plateau, hard to see Herodotus, which would be right there. But Aristarchus crater, bright spots. And then right here you have Schroeder's Valley, the snaking canyon. Such an important feature. Also kind of has that dendritic filamentary action going on. It almost feels connected somehow to Copernicus. And then to the right of that, this first, because you start noticing Kepler, you're like, wow, that's a cool feature. And you see these more interesting, more defined rays coming off of it. A lot like a solar astrid, like a sunflower, for example. But same sort of structure as well. And then, but what you don't notice right out the gate is this feature, which is really not even talked about, but this is almost like a mimic of Aristarchus's diamond. It's like Kepler's plateau, and they don't call it that. But you can really see underneath, especially by doing this contrast stuff with OBS, you can definitely see a lot more integration. "921 says you found. What's next? Strut." Is that a hint to shut up and play some music? Let me know. What's up, Darren Geary? Says Saturn's famous hexagon. Indeed, it's the same exact reason that is formed, I believe. Why is that formed? Because there's a circle pushing outwards, and it hits boundary layers, and any circle really is a multiple of segments. And ultimately, if you push a circle to its limits, or a bubble, it'll create boundary layers and ultimately form interlocking or nested hexagonal shapes, because that's the strongest form in nature. You can see it in a sink with bubbles. You can see it in molecular chemistry, and on throughout geology. And it's always attributed to either coincidence or some mystery that has yet to be solved. Let's see. D. Peterson says, Sinus Iridum was a massive impact that filled with lunar lava. So let's look at Sinus Iridum right here. So Sinus Iridum lies at the wall of Mare Imbrium to the left of Copernicus in this view. What's going on, Howie Dunn? Welcome. Happy New Year. Great to see you. Mary Quite says, looks like the iris of an eye. Exactly, it's the same sort of reason. The iris of an eye is formed by electrical pinching along a Birkeland filament that goes right through the center of the eye, which is how I think we see things. That's how information comes into the eye, through a Birkeland filament, coaxial Birkeland filament. Therefore, the center of the eye is the point that we focus on, or the point that we focus information on, or within, and then around it, all the kind of muscle and fibers kind of trying to be pulled and coalesced along the dielectric inertial plane towards the center of this pinch. Makes perfect sense. Same reason there are craters, that there's an eyeball. So yeah, we were looking at Sinus Iridum here. And I feel like, again, the story here is that not just craters and mare, well, not just craters, but mare, Maria, plural. So that's Sinus Iridum right there. But this whole thing, Mare Imbrium, is almost like much larger hexagonal diamond shape. So you're asking if Sinus Iridum was a crater that got impacted and then filled up with lava and then cooled, right? That's the standard story. The flip, it's really very simple. It's either that, but right, you'd have to excavate a region the size of this whole thing, Oceanus Procellarum in general, if the story is true that all these regions, these darkened regions, are lava lakes, right? Lava oceans, where the moon had a surface like this, and then it was bombarded for years and years, and these whole regions got boiled like crazy, like turned into a lava ocean, and then they cooled, and then all these regions remained or got impacted. It's actually quite confusing. If you go watch the JPL How the Moon Was Made, simulated render, you'll see that I've said it before, but the yada yada Aristarchus, Kepler, probably Copernicus, they yada yada some really huge features on the moon within that animation. And when I say yada yada, I mean they just throw a whole bunch of little rocks at it, and then they fade in on the animation these features like Aristarchus. So Aristarchus is not just a random impact. I mean, it's highly specific. It's like one of those regions, it's like Everest or the Nazca Lines, or things that we recognize, basically. It's like a Stonehenge type of region. I mean, in fact, there are at least a dozen places on the moon that are so recognizable. It just cannot be attributed to like, oh yeah, a bunch of things hit this and Aristarchus was formed. Too much specific geometry. One being that Aristarchus crater is specifically on the corner or the rim of a diamond, right? Not anywhere else. You can't see it really, but Schroeder's Valley is a snaking canyon. Actually, in fact, it kind of goes like this and it goosenecks, which returns uphill if you actually check the elevation on this. It's one of those things that's impossible with volcanic tubes. The other thing is all the striations that come out of it, and its kind of correlation with Kepler and Copernicus over here. And then nobody talks about Kepler at all and how that was formed and what the plateau is, right? So there's so many different things here that we could talk about. What's going on, chat room? Ellie Wynn Lurkin, Astralis, what's happening? Welcome. Darren says, I'm sure I read some Tesla's work linked to electricity with geometric shapes. Hell yeah, are you new on the channel? I don't know if I've seen you come through before, but yeah, that's what I talk about all the time. I've remixed a lot of different ideas from a bunch of different people in terms of how consciousness works, how geology works, how pretty much the whole world works, but I focus in on the surface of the moon and how it seems a lot more likely that the moon was in contact or near another planetary object or comet and got its surface singed and electrically blasted out to leave these very specifically carved out features versus the standard idea right now, which is really what's accepted. But when you look at the animation, it really doesn't fully explain what we see. And there's almost no discussion about this at all in the private sector or public sector. So for me, this is super important. It's something because a lot of people can see the moon and a lot of people have moon streams, but I don't think a lot of people actually talk about like what really happened on the surface of the moon. Like what are we really looking at? How does it relate to electricity? How does it relate to Earth, consciousness? Why do we see faces in the moon and things? What is pareidolia, synchronicity, and electric Birkeland filaments, and how they can carve the surface of planets and Earth probably, as well as form mountain ranges. You know, this idea of fractal reintegration is really, really cool. The details are wonderful tonight. Let me take a little break. I'm going to keep us here on the zoomed in shot looking very nice over at, what is this? This is Sea of Serenity and Mare Imbrium. And then over here, Sea of Tranquility, Serenity. Yeah, really, really very nice. Let me just remove this for a moment. Somebody said, what songs would you like to hear? Let's see. Vladimir says, so the Saturn moon matrix per David Icke doesn't exist. It does exist geometrically in terms of plasma physics. It doesn't exist in terms of humans or aliens planting or sending signals from Saturn to the moon factory that reaps souls and sends them back to the prison planet Earth, and amplifies the signal from the black cube Saturn to the people on Earth and keeps them imprisoned. Certainly not. Certainly not David Icke. But what really is connected is that the hexagon on the north pole of Saturn is the same as the shape that we see in honeycomb, that we see around the human eye. The human eye bridge is side-by-side hexagons. We see it in nebula, in basalt flats, in sugar molecules, in bubbles in a sink. Nested hexagons is the primary, simplest, and strongest structure to the universe. So it's not mysterious at all that Saturn, that is grown along a Birkeland filament coming through its north pole to south pole and twisting, creating counter-rotating rings, will ultimately adhere to the strongest form it can because of the density at the poles. Therefore, a hexagon on any planet at both poles is completely understandable and simple and expected. Think about how it's presented in the public sector right now, where even mainstream, they're the biggest hypocrites, but mainstream cosmos will tell you it's such a mystery. What a mystery it is. It's, who knows? Could be anything. When, in fact, they have images from Chandra and many other radio observatories in X-ray seeing exactly why there's a hexagon on the poles, and it's due to the fact that these types of flows around a coaxial Birkeland filament are completely understood. Acacia's like, all I know is wrap it up. All right, let's do that. Strut coming in hot.
Boxes and boxes, your infinite toxins, all got something to say. Indestructible ideas are vanishing, aimlessly wandering away. The that disappeared. What would you? I was just
around my head instead. I felt you on
like you're cool. I've been waiting on the sea for years. I've been waiting for the secret all along. And you know what brings it? Don't you know what soul can sing? Singing about this dream so long for you. I've been dreaming about the song. So long for you, I've been singing about the song. So long for you, I've been dreaming about the one with you. I've been singing about this dream. So long for you, till I see the color of your eyes reflected in the same picture I made for you. All along, then you know what brings it. And you know what soul can sing. That you know what brings it. And you know what soul can. We got it all. And you know what brings it up. And you know what soul can sing. Got an electric love. What brings it up. And you know what soul can.
All right. A couple of the new songs. I realize the drums are mixed pretty loud there at the end. Got to fix that. So those are coming out soon. That's Electric Blood and Dreamfields. Thanks everybody for hanging out. Great to see y'all. Happy New Year if I missed you. And all you lurkers, you good lurkers. What's happening? Who joined us? I see Patrick McNellis. What's going on? And Vladius asked me about there's no super chat. Yeah, just for anybody wondering, the channel is monetized, but I tend to not do that whole thing where there are super chats or donations or tipping or joining or anything like that. Try and keep this space channel as free and as ad-free as possible for everybody. If you'd like to support the channel, check out the links in the description for the music and Bandcamp, and you can put whatever you like for the music in there. I'll use that opportunity to say thank you to everybody who's been picking up music on the Bandcamp page. You know who you are. I do very much appreciate it. Several of you have done it, so hell yeah, thank you. That is also a great way because Bandcamp is a small platform. They take a cut, and I get a lot more of that than I would a super chat, for example, where we share half the money with YouTube. Let's see. Charlie Silverman, what's happening? And you're asking, I'm on the 11-inch tonight, and I think I'm just going to stick with that till the moon disappears. I have the 8, but I think I'm just going to do a quick show tonight, just check in with y'all. I think that's it, right? Dank Lunar Tuner. Let's keep going with the jams here. Just going to zoom around a bit. If you have any questions about Electric Universe or any thoughts about the moon, please ask me in the comments in the section, and I'll answer them for next time and or here, of course. But definitely leave me comments if you have stuff for me to talk about. I always appreciate it. Even if I don't actually respond to those comments, I'll read it and I'll come talk about it on the show. What's happening, Dan D. Lyon? What's going on? Oh, and the comment Howie was making about the Gregorian calendar and how the new year doesn't really matter. I think it only matters in the context that so many people abide by a ritual, right? That's in that way it can matter to the people who believe it's a thing, and therefore the rest of us feel that. And whether or not we believe something is, fake or artificial or unnecessary. It still happens, you know. All right, what other jams I'm gonna play here? Let's do Feel for You and then Repeat Parties. Is always a good jam. right, I'll just talk here for a second, and we'll get back to the music, but there's a little tempo switcher, a couple of randos here. But I want to reference two things. One being this idea that the moon was caught in gossamer thread. I'm going to find this reference real quick. It's I think it's Homer in the Iliad, but the moon, gossamer thread. That's how I remember it. That's not correct either. How about, because it wasn't the moon, it was called something else, Ares, perhaps, or is it Ulysses? I'm going to find it here. Give me a second. So, Selenites. The pre-Selenites are the people who lived before the moon, apparently. But there's this idea that there was a period where people like you and I who had food and water and homes were watching the moon get captured in real time. And then after that, we had a moon. But that's pretty fascinating. In standard cosmology, the moon was here 2-3 billion years ago. It formed by somebody knocking the block off of old Earth. And then it formed just via, what's it called? When all the rocks orbit and they fuse together, completely phased out of me. Accretion, the accretion disk model, where, there was a giant planet, it got hit, turned into debris, the debris orbited the body, the debris fused together and created the moon and Earth. So that story is really interesting, and that story has an animation that goes along with it, but there's a different idea that planets and comets and asteroids and stars grow along Birkeland filaments as if like a human would grow along an umbilical cord, and an apple would grow along a branch or a tree or a twig, and so on and so forth. Things don't just exist as islands in the void. So let me find this pre-Selenites thing. Oh, for some reason it's much harder to find than I thought. Anyway, when I play some tracks, I'm going to look that up. I've definitely talked about it before, but there is this reference to a gossamer thread where Ares is reeling in, I want to say Sophia is the name of the moon at the time. And so if our ancestors saw the moon being pulled into tidal locking, it's really fascinating, right? This could have happened 2,000 to 12,000 years ago, potentially, in an electric universe. All right, so will I spell that? Accretion is ACCRETION, accretion disk. Liquefaction is different. Accretion is the model by which rocky, like different sized rocks in orbit around a body coalesce into a kind of not an asteroid, but a kind of like a Katamari ball of rocks. And then because of the heat, they actually morph kind of into a sphere. And that is how moons are formed, for example, in the standard model. This is one of those things that is not debated as much as it should, I think. But, there's a lot out there that I've definitely not seen. There's a lot that I've seen out there. And there's a lot that I have seen where this is how it's talked about, things get hit, there's gravity, and then you have these accretion disk models where that's how stars are formed and planets are formed. But they don't really talk, or, public and pop cosmology doesn't talk about things being grown along branches or root systems, which I think makes a lot more sense. NGC says, yeah, Sophia, right? Yeah. Thank you for the validation. Sometimes it escapes me, but I know I read these things a bunch. Oh, the pre-Selenites. Selene is like a name for the moon. Sel is salt in French. So salty, the salty people, the pre-salty people here. Pre-Selenites, and search Gossamer thread. It's pretty, like 10 minutes of research, you'll find the paper on it. It's like one page where somebody, actually, I found it on Amazon too. It's an excerpt from, I want to say it's either Ulysses or maybe a Homer text. It's not coming to me right now. The other thing that I want to talk about was, there's a comment about antimatter, for example. And I think the simple way to look at antimatter that I've understood, and I corroborate this with having looked at quantum mechanics, having looked at this idea of spooky action at a distance or quantum entanglement. What it really means, in the way I see it, is if you've seen me draw this idea of the human body being a node or nucleus of an atom, and consciousness, memory, life being in bubbles outside the human body. And the human body interacts with these bubbles of plasma via pinging these layers. So you send a signal to a bubble that's 30 feet around you, and that's where you were born. And 15 feet is your midlife, and the bubble that's right next to you is what's happening right now. So that's why you remember things much more easily in that's called short-term memory, right? And then distant or faded memories are actually physically diffuse, loose plasma bubbles that follow you around because they're tied to the human oscillation. So, that being said, and I'll talk more about that throughout the shows, but I think antimatter is misconstrued as like a mirror image of, almost like those sci-fi shows where they put the little mustache or the goatee and they're like, that's the evil version of you. But I actually think antimatter and sympathetic resonance and quantum entanglement is more about how the nucleus reacts to the shells, almost like how the words are to a page. So when you read a book, the sense is that you read the letters and then you make sense of the words. You're very far removed from the idea of the page itself, the paper. But without the paper, you couldn't see the words because there would be no paper to print the words upon. So in a way, dark energy is different. That's the process by which counter space works. But the page, if you think about it in that very simple analogy, the page is antimatter to the words being matter. Stars are matter to all the space around the star, the negative imprint of the star that holds the star in place and allows us to see the star like the page to the word. That's what antimatter is. So I don't think there's like a version of the moon that's black, right, that looks like the moon, but it's an inverted mirror of that. In fact, the mirror moon is all the space around the moon that we don't see, that informs what the surface of the moon looks like from the outside. So that's what I think antimatter really is. It's not matter that's in another dimension that we can't imagine. No, antimatter is specifically already there by virtue of you existing in an equilibrium, depending on the ratio, on the Fibonacci, depending where we are in the spiral, the ratio is probably different, but it ebbs and flows, right? So which part is more white than black and which part is more black than white at any given time, the ebb and flow is probably what the coaxial Birkeland filament, the oscillation, the root oscillation is not derived from, you probably get that ebb and flow from the coaxial twisting of the Birkeland filament. Mary, have a great night. Great to see you. Catch you soon. Taco. Moshi. Howie Dunn says, didn't Alan Watts touch on that? He did. I mean, I've kind of taken some of his ideas from the koans and his reinterpretation of the Hindu teachings. And if you mix that with Eileen McCusick and Rupert Sheldrake, biomorphic field, morphogenetic field, biofield, tuning forks, resonance, and then you take quantum mechanics where you have nucleus and you have probability electron shells that are basically now just discharge values. That's what electron shells are. So the plasma shell idea completely existed before I thought of it, obviously. But I followed string theory, and they will not resolve the fact that there are shells, and these shells exist around planets, humans, and everything large. So quantum mechanics is like, no, there are these shells, but they are only in the quantum world. And then special relativity says, no, it says quantum mechanics is fine, but at large sizes like black holes, which we're not sure exist. I mean, black holes, I think, are probably the center of these pinches, right? The center of the vacuum tube, or the center of the plasmoid. But in special relativity, or in the standard model, this idea of electric discharge shells around a nucleus is never even considered in terms of how stars are powered, in terms of how planets are formed, in terms of how the moon was formed. It's never correlated with that idea. And so it's either done intentionally or ignored intentionally, or it's something that I guess maybe I'm putting the two together and saying that, hey, like it seems obvious that at the quantum bit, if we're in a recursive fractal universe, then at the very smallest level, there are shells around a nucleus. Then, of course, the human body has shells around it, and the Earth has shells around it. And we see these, like in the form of the mesosphere, atmosphere, ionosphere. The Van Allen radiation belts are these plasma layers. We think, oh, they're just radiation, right? They're just random things. But imagine they're actually information about the Earth and about the people on Earth. It's the Akashic record, if people have ever thought about that. What is the Akashic record, right? What is a light body? What is a rainbow body? What is ascension? If not a physical act, right? It can only happen if you're actually connected via electrical root systems. Otherwise, it's always imaginary. Cybercelli says, cymatics certainly supports how vibration creates all that we perceive and how God spoke all things into existence. Well, again, the whole idea of God, I said this yesterday, but I'll say it again. You right now are making your own hair and digesting food and creating bone structure and ligaments and things that you can't even begin to explain how you're doing, and organizing the sugars and peptides and muscles and growing tissue right now, each and every one of you, and it doesn't really matter how much you've sinned or not sinned, doesn't matter what you've done in your life, you're still doing what you would say a god could do. If you were to see a person on TV, a human anthropomorphized character on TV that could make an eyeball from scratch, you'd say, wow, that's godlike. People say godlike about just random, like, piano playing. Not my piano playing, but other people's piano playing. But right now, each and every one of you is a god, of course. There's no doubt about it physically. You could say, oh, it's a hologram. Oh, it's genetic identity. It's genetic code. It's all these abstract ideas. But the only real actuality, the physical actuality, is that you're growing your own body right now, you as a human being. So you are either, well, there's no either. You're doing that. There is no invisible God doing that. I mean, you could say that, but what's really happening is you're doing it. Have I said you're doing it enough? You're doing it. So I don't know about if there's a God that spoke all things into existence, that's a God that is other than us, is my point, which is we probably spoke this world into existence. We speak this world into existence right now. that makes more sense to me. I don't think there's this moment that some old guy said, "Let there be light," and therefore that was it. Because that person is probably us. But Cybercell, you know, when you say that, like, we certainly are all co-creators. After all, why do we have imagination, reflection of our creators? But there's nothing wrong with having a creator. And if there was a creator and I had to meet that person or thing or creature, I would say, wow, well, it's amazing that you made me. However, right now, that is still speculative. What's not speculative is that you created your body. You know, that's all. I mean, it has to be taken very, very strictly, because we have to agree just within the realm of physical reality, right? Like putting your hand on a stove and getting burned, right? You can say that, oh, I won't get burned. But if you put your hand on a stove that's turned on, you're likely to get burned. That kind of reality. So it could be in a hologram. It doesn't matter. Your hand's going to get burned. Could be a simulation. Doesn't matter. Your hand's going to get burned, right? Could be God, but God's not going to stop your hand from getting burned. Therefore, if God won't stop your hand from getting burned, there has to be some sort of fixed reality that we live in. Within the fixed reality, you still have an eyeball or two and lungs and blood that you're making and doing right now. That's the physics. There's no denying that. You can of course deny it, but there's no physically denying it. Each and every one of us has made a human body over and over and over again. Whether or not it's in the image of a former creator or an outside creator is an idea. It's a concept, which is seductive and interesting and fear-inducing and glorious, but it's still an idea. The real thing that still overrides that is that you're doing all this. Let's see. Patrick says, "What did you say? I'm doing it." Yeah. What do y'all think? Where does faith come into play? Well, faith is a lot of things, right? Faith doesn't necessarily have to only be about religion. You can have faith in your own ability to cook a meal. Is that religious faith? No, right? Or it doesn't have to be. What about streaming the moon? That's a technical faith. I have faith in my technical ability to do this thing. So you can have faith about having a creator because you say, well, I don't believe that I could have come up with how to make eyeballs, which is fine, but that starts to border into imaginary faith because there's no way to prove that. But I can prove to you that you're making your own body right now because there's nobody else doing it right now. Most of you don't have somebody weaving your body right now into something. And every creature, right? Not just you and me, but every caterpillar to bird, they grow themselves. So each of us, each creature on Earth is a god. It's not in the image of the god. It is a god. It's very important. It doesn't make sense to say that it's in the image of a creator because you're still relinquishing the responsibility of the fact that you are actively participating. Let me get to our wide shot, even though Tycho looks amazing. Top just a little bit more here. Walk on hot coals. Well, those people who walk on hot coals, it's very rare, and there are ways to practice things to a point that seems like magic to most people. But to people who actually practice walking on hot coals, there are even levels to that, right? You'll find people who can walk on even hotter coals for even longer, and there are some who are newbies at it, right? And there's some who have been doing it forever. So even within walking on hot coals, you have parameters that we're physically bound to. But those boundaries are things that we've created, not an imaginary force, even though you can call it that. Let's see. Patrick McNellis says, we have the power to build our bodies and to destroy our bodies. Well, like an apple, right? How does an apple rot, or a banana, or a flower? The flower is growing itself using all the tools around it, and then a flower is wilting itself to follow the structure of nature. Because if every flower existed, there would be an overflow of flowers. And every flower generation carries carries more information than the previous generation, more distilled, more refined, more fractalized information. So death and life is a very healthy process for a growing Earth, which allows you to really have a much more coherent integration with the Earth itself, right? People say these things constantly. Oh, the Schumann resonance. Oh, the Schumann resonance. Oh, 440 hertz. But nobody really understands deeply how that actually affects the human body and reality, at least as far as I've heard. My concept, or at least what I've come to around something like that, is the fact that harmonic resonance is informational resonance, and therefore the Schumann resonance is what the Earth oscillates at, interacting with its plasma layers. But each human body doesn't necessarily have to oscillate at the Schumann resonance. The human body oscillates at a human body resonance. And even that, you have microtonal shifts that allow each person to look a little bit different and act a little bit differently. And animals too, right? Animals are on a different order, on a scalar order of vibrational oscillation than humans are. Let's see, Cyber Sully says, folks are trained to look externally for God, and that is why it is a never-ending search in vain. They are trained in the same way to look externally for their health, and that is why they get sicker with each visit to the butcher shop and each trip to the pharmacist, sorcerer and poisoner. So I'll comment on that because I agree with you I agree with you in terms of how people have vices and or habits, hobbies, activities that harm themselves. But I will say that I've also come to terms with that those things are necessary, right? So the human race, the human structure, the deity structure that each of us has knows exactly when to kill ourselves off, right? So it's not happening to us. The whole system is working in perfect harmony. And the way we know that it's working in harmony is because we exist at all. I think that's a little bit of Alan Watts too. He says 2 reasons you don't know what you want. 1, you already have it. 2, you don't even know what you're looking for. Right? It's like seeing the color of your own eyes, or seeing the inside of one's head. There are things that are there that you can't see, right? But with the reflection of everything around you, you see those things. So it's the relational quality to the universe that actually makes the whole, and not just the individual. So Howie Dunn spitting some conspiracy end of the world stuff. So people are waiting for a CME from the sun to wipe out the grid and kill everybody. Well, it won't kill everybody, right? It'll just be very exciting for a little while until the grid goes back on. And then the zombie apocalypse, you'll only get a few people, but really it won't catch on, because most people are much happier watching TV and doing drugs and eating good food. Nobody wants to eat brains. What else? People are waiting for 5G to kill everybody. Well, 5G is also helping people do some of the best things that have ever happened on Earth, right? For example, doing this show is from technology, right? Without this, we couldn't have this show. And, for me, it's like one of the greatest things to be able to share this and to have a telescope and order that. Height of technology and capitalism, that's what we get from it, as well as, anti-vaxxers, anti-voting, all this stuff. I think more so, I think it's ridiculous to have these debates where people call each other names, like anti-vaxxer, for example, or Karens or snowflakes. It's always pissed me off. I don't like to fight with people about it, but these labels are just so stupid, because using those labels is exactly what the power propaganda system wants you to do. So the people who are most vocal about being anti-propaganda and anti-capitalist and pro the small guy use terms handed to them by the propaganda campaigns. So I never even things like the Mandela effect, even asteroid hitting Earth. That's all from History Channel and Discover and Hollywood, right? People wouldn't think about it if it wasn't shoved down your throats in every single movie. If you had 100 movies that were funded that were about electric universe stuff, it would be different, about how we're all connected and how people can do music and just complete harmony of the system. It would change how people thought, but instead people think that Earth is going to get hit with something, that the sun hates us, that aliens don't want to come to Earth because the human race sucks. And the narrative has seeped in so deeply that people are just believe it and tell each other that. They're like, can't you wait? I can't wait till something comes and hits the Earth so I can laugh and say, I told you so, huh? And I'm like, how did we get here? How did we get to a point where not only are you yearning for an apocalypse and you'll be and there's kind of this disappointment when people disagree that there will be an apocalypse. You think about it. There's been a polio vaccine. There's been a vaccine for a smallpox vaccine. Some people took it, others didn't. Human race survived. Now that everybody's talking about vaccinations, some people take it, some people won't. Human race will survive. I mean, we could talk about it eternally if that's what it was all about. But ultimately, way more fun to talk about the moon. Way more exciting to listen to great tunes. I'm not waiting for the next CME. In fact, life wants to kind of bore you to death. It doesn't want to hit you with a rock. What's so funny ultimately about conspiracist catastrophism is that it's just one of these time wasters where you end up being so paralyzed by the fear of expecting your imminent demise that you never end up living. And then, and when I say living, don't, forget about what I'm doing. It's what you want to do. But think about how many chemicals in the brain are occupied by this idea that somebody's hiding something from you. And there's a Truman Show thing going on. And there are aliens ready to come and enslave you. And there's a reptilian king and queen that eat babies for dinner. And David Icke. And man, it's exhausting. And coming from somebody who's very well versed in almost all that culture, I found it very distracting ultimately. It's a very occupying mindset to be in, where the only way out is to say, well, it's fine to die. I'm ready to die. Once you're ready to die and you can go to bed ready to die, then you can start exploring the world. But until then, there's always the next catastrophe that's coming to end what is a life that is not being lived. I mean, think about it. Cyber says the sun hates us. What a joke. None of this would be without the sun. Well, I'm laughing with you because that's sort of, I mean, think about it. Like this idea that look at all the documentaries, all the movies, Day After Tomorrow, the one with Will Smith, all the zombie apocalypses. It's always after a solar flare. Almost all these movies are based on solar flares, and then tons and tons of conspiracies and correct science channels that do have some ideas that I agree with talk about catastrophism in the form of a solar flare and to be prepared. What does that even mean? Do you want to be on a planet where, I mean, I'm sorry, I could get down this rabbit hole where I get really angsty about it. But ultimately for me, if there's a solar flare and there's a CME, I'll deal with it when the time comes. This idea that people can be prepared for it is not true. And there's always going to be somebody more prepared than you and richer than you are. So it's a game that is not worth the candle. It's not worth playing. I'd rather be ready to die at any moment. And if a solar flare came, then great. I've lived a full life. That bet seems way more promising than to wait every day and never live. Rastaman Lives says, you just described the freedom of a relationship with Christ. I have no fear of death and I live my life accordingly. Yeah, but you're to invoke this archetype, Jesus, either Jesus of Nazareth, white man in a robe with a blonde beard, or Jesus of Nigeria, black man with a beard and in a brown robe, and so on and so forth, is again patriarchal, unnecessary, and salvationist. You need somebody else to come help you do this thing, when in fact you grew your own eyeballs. You're going to kill your own self. You manifest this entire world as a deity, and somehow there's this incessant need to involve another man. I'm sorry. The thing with Jesus is so it doesn't not make sense. It makes perfect sense. People want a good-looking guy to help them do things, but it's unnecessary, right? It's like an extra set of hands that you don't need. I guess some people do need it, but for me, freedom is understanding that you can die at any moment, and that it is your doing that brought you here. You decided to come and have this life, and you decide when you leave. And when you accept that power, then you can truly live. That's in fact, when people ask me what the meaning of life is, the meaning of life is to live. The meaning of life is to have the life and to accept that you made this life and you're doing it. This is that. Versus a life filled with constant regret and anticipation of the end of this life when you've never spent time actually experiencing that life. You know, I guess in the holistic sense, people like that are necessary because that is the flesh of the universe. Many can't get over their dogma. But for me personally, like maybe because I survived many circumstances where maybe I should have died and I survived, that I feel like every day is lucky. Rastaman says, that's fair, but the idea that we created the entire universe is narcissism by definition. So that's a great response, but to that, let me reply by saying the myth of Narcissus is that this very good-looking man went and stared at himself in the river and was so taken by his own beauty that he tried to embrace the river and drowned. And that it's very bad to consider yourself good-looking or to stare at yourself in the mirror or to self-aggrandize. That's the implication, right, of being narcissistic or an elite or arrogant or boastful, etc. All these things are parameters of a human existence and a human life. So the idea that the human body, that we're gods, sounds very narcissistic, right? It sounds like, I'm so great, I'm a god. But that's just a simple perspective shift. For me, it's more so, do I believe that an archetypal patriarchal figure in a white robe with a long beard decided to make human beings and put them on Earth? Or right now, do I have skin and hair and eyeballs that I continue to upgrade and make, and I continue to degrade and rot of my own accord? You can say that that's arrogant or narcissistic or self-involved, but that doesn't make it true. It just makes it an opinion of a take, right? That's just my take on things. But where I'm coming from is that it's way more physically logical, because my brain is all about technicality. I like playing guitar. I like doing technological stuff on a computer. I like detailed science. Detailed science says that you're making your body, not some patriarchal god. It's not atheistic either. It's not saying I hate religion or I hate faith or theology. I'm just saying that there's a place for imaginary or just speculative and I don't say imaginary derogatorily either. I just say imaginary in terms of it's not a physical presence. The physical presence is you and other people. If you said everybody in this chat room is also a god, then would that make it less narcissistic? Because for me, I would say that all of you are gods right now. So it's not about me. Hey, what's up, Smash Show Mash? Happy New Year, brother. What's going on? Let me see. I see you. Did I miss all your comments? Damn. I missed a lot of comments. Hold on. I had this thing scrolled up halfway. Give me 1 second. Lol, nasty, confused, painted into a corner, disingenuous. Whoa. I've just mocked and mocked all who deserve it. Carrington event. Yeah, but to the Carrington event and Tunguski, is it Tunguska? Or the Tunguski. Hold on. Tunguska. The Tunguska event or the CMEs that have happened. Am I denying that those have happened? Absolutely not. But what has actually happened? We're at the height of technology right now, right? That's what happened. These CMEs have happened before. Even a Carrington level event has happened, and yet the human race prevails. So that's really the proof in the pudding. It's not that these events can't happen. It's that waiting for the next big one is just such a huge distraction for anybody trying to live a full life. That's my take. Yo, NGC, you have a great rest of your day. Yo, Q, yo, what's happening? Happy New Year. Let's see. Patrick McNellis says it goes back to religious faith again, the faith that this being will help you when you call. Yeah, again, it's a sense of weakness, right? It's a sense that you need to call on Jesus or call on God to help you through a tough time. Now, does that help people? Yes, it does. So I'm not denying that people have faith in religion for a reason, right? I'm not anti-religion. But for me, if you're talking about technical, detailed analysis of our consciousness, of our reality, when you say, I need help, and you sit there alone, and you have a smoke, and you sit and wonder why, you're dealing with your own bicameral existence, with your own plasma shells. So when you seek Jesus and you seek God and you have these outer body religious experiences and these rebirths, look, people might think I'm insulting them. I don't mean to insult anyone here, by the way, just saying. But when you have these experiences, what's really happening is you're interacting with the self. The self is the deity, right? There's no other deity physically. I mean, you can say there is because it sounds arrogant, and that's anti-religious, right? The reason arrogance is frowned upon is because the church wanted to maintain power, and the king and the queen wanted to maintain power. So they said you can't laugh in church, you can't have fun, you can't have sex, you can't do all these things. So they made it really unfun and unpowerful. So people really want faith, but they also think that considering themselves powerful within faith is counter to being a faithful servant. Even the idea of a faithful servant, right? A faithful servant is one who's quite powerful in service of others, right? But there's a really weird, twisted way of observing religion, faith, royalty, and caste systems. Let's see. What's going on? Esoteric Gold. Great to see you. I'm just wrapping it up here. I've already lost the moon. I'm just talking to a black screen here. But let me just switch up to some stars and wrap up this show with y'all. Give me a couple of moments. Leave me some comments in here. I guess Smash-O-Mash, you're just chatting away a storm about your opinions. Love it. Once again, to complete my thought line, this is from Cybercell. He says, they rarely look within and find that they are the one. They have looking and waiting for. They never stop to consider what consciousness is. So yeah, just quickly on that is that maybe that is like what that 80-20 or 90-10 split is, the relational quality of the audience members to the performers. And so you'll have a far fewer sample amount of people who lead and perform. That's why you have so few branches on a tree, limbs on a tree, and you have more branches, you have even more twigs, and you have even more leaves. So as it fractalizes, you have more of one thing over the other. And but without the leadership of the root, the trunk, and the main branches of a tree or the limbs of a tree, you don't have the core structure. But really from the outside, you see all these leaves and you see the tree like that, and you get the sense that you don't really consider how important the original root system is. And then of course the roots underneath the ground, very large trees have root systems that people can only think of. They can't really see. And so there's so much information to be garnered from the self. Yo, what's going on, Shockwave? Everybody's showing up here last minute. Let me switch to a shot that we can all enjoy. Actually, why not just flip to an older shot here? Yeah, this is just from an hour ago. Yo, Cybercelly, if you're taking off, take it easy. Peace and abundance to you. So just switching here to a pre-recorded shot of the moon for y'all, and just let's ride this one out. Now that so many people are here and we're all chatting. Let's see what's going on. Patrick McNellis says, what do you think about the power of prayer? Some say that praying can heal, and there are rituals of praying in many different regions. So that's one of those things that I feel like is real because, or Israel is real is because prayer is harmonic resonance, and it's like tuning fork technology, right? So prayer is one of those things that is physically real because it exists in terms of, it's like singing or chanting, and every different culture has a form of prayer, and therefore I think that prayer in the sense of sympathetic resonance, in terms of healing very base level cymatic patterns on Earth, is completely real. But I definitely don't think that when you say, I pray that this thing happens, some invisible man who lives somewhere in the sky or underneath the ground hears that message and reacts. It makes no sense. It's much more logical that there are these layers of plasma of information. Each one of us is a god, and Earth is a god, and then the solar system is also a god. And each god has its own abilities to create and kill. And all of us working at once, since we're a fractal holographic recursion, then you get this real diversity of life that we see. The problem with, like this idea of specifically asking for things when it comes to prayer or prayer of intent, is that people are not practicing that in that way, right? You don't, guided meditation or leading meditation circles or ayahuasca ceremonies, it's due to whoever the MC is or whoever the host is or whatever type of dose you're taking or whatever type of chant you're doing, right? I think there's it's the same thing with just yogic meditation, like zazen, sitting zen. Sitting zen, and Alan Watts made this really clear to me, which is that no amount of sitting zen will make you a Buddha, right? There's this illusion that you sit and you meditate, and the more you meditate and the harder it is, the more enlightened you are. But that's total BS, actually. You can become enlightened without ever sitting. In fact, sitting in Zazen is what a Buddha does, right? So you have to be a Buddha to even consider yourself sitting in meditation. So people who don't understand life and don't understand that they are the God, the self-God creator, and they sit in Zen and meditate on a Merkaba Drunvalo Melchizedek reverse inverted Merkaba meditation, thinking that they're going to ascend into a light body, are fooling themselves, because that doesn't really work, considering physics. But what does work, considering physics, is that you're along a Birkeland filament, and if 10 people in a plasma bubble create a concept, it's likely that that concept will resonate strongly with the rest of the world. So power of intention, does work, but in fact, there are parameters that have to be specified in order for it to work better. Let's see. Esoteric Gold says, Santa Claus can hear prayers, otherwise how would he know which toys to buy me from Macy's? I don't know. I really don't know. He probably has some sort of cell service in the North Pole. Self-service. What's happening in July, Soul? Good to see you. It's been a while. Happy New Year. Thanks for hopping on here. I was going to wrap up the show and then everybody joined. Just so you know, this is not a live shot. It's from about 30 minutes ago, pre-recorded. The moon has left my visibility range at this point. Please elaborate, Smash-O-Mash. Oh, come on, man. A Birkeland filament. Lol. I love the indignance of your response. I'm not sure what you're implying, but let's see. Smash-O-Mash says Wizards Day ritual magic is a powerful magic. Any specific love spells or destruction spells, for example, are lesser arcana. Okay. I mean, look, I love talking about that stuff because I love Oblivion and Skyrim. But I don't know. I don't know if we live in that world right now. Although, look, there are code words, there are magic words, there are incantations, there are vibrations that could do things, right? Do I think that there's no possibility of a word that you could say and it could manifest an actual object out of so-called thin air? Maybe. Who knows? That could happen. But now I know how that would happen, right? You'd manifest along a Birkeland, like the conjugate geometry, right? The material would manifest along what we've seen throughout the entire world. But why would it be different than anything we're already doing, right? This is basically magic. It's not basically magic. It's highly complex magic. These computers, internet, talking to y'all on chat, it's already magic. Again, it's that Alan Watts thing where it's like, the reason you don't know what you want is because you already have it. Jedi Princess, you have a great night. Great to see you. Have a sleep well. I'll catch you soon. Let's see. Vladimir says, don't feed the trolls. No, Smash-O-Mash has a channel, but we definitely come from different vantage points. Sorry, Rastaman Lives, did I miss what you were talking about? I see a couple of messages retracted. Says, Rastaman Lives, perhaps that is the disconnect. I was having this conversation with another homie. When we have a worldview that states God created the universe, we don't need to know how. That is the faith-based aspect. Okay. Only that he did. Okay. Let's see. Our worldviews are very similar. God did give us authority to control the earth. We gave our authority over to another entity in my worldview. Sorry, I'm just reading up on all this stuff that was passed. Okay. Yeah, I guess I don't have to reiterate what I said earlier, but I grew up in a very religious society, and religion harmed a lot, and I turned into an atheist for a while, and this idea of faith was very just distant from me. So I've changed, and I think that faith is perfectly fine. Most people who do have faith are good people, and it's not for me to judge them and for them to feel like somehow because I don't agree that they shouldn't have faith or whatever. But for me, it makes more sense that I'm kind of in control of this ship. And without that, that's sort of the faith that I have. The faith that things will be fine is different than the faith, I guess, that you have, where somebody else will take care of things, I assume. But I guess, look, it just could be looking at the same thing from different vantage points. For me, I just know that I'm definitely going to die, right? So if I'm definitely going to die, I'm not going to spend every day waiting to die. I'm going to try and live and experience everything from day to day. And this is what most people regret. Like, you end up seeing all those stories, all the Hollywood movies, it's always about regret. It's always mopey people who've never really lived a rich, full day. If you lived one day, one good day, you can die well at night. This is the true Zen story. It's not about sitting for eternity under a tree. It's about having one good moment in this life. And if you've had one or many, then you can die well. And if you can die well, then I don't need personally some external force to give their blessing to me for me to live. Do you know what I mean? There's a bit of this handing over authority or waiting for an alien race to pop out of the shadows and say, hey, I did it. But that's part of the waiting for something to happen versus leading and deciding what happens. And it's not to say that everyone's going to be that way. I just happen to be that way. Patrick McNella says, I study Wicca, and most, if not all of it, is manifestation of ideas and putting your own magical self-power to complete those goals, ideas with rituals and prayers. So if you rearrange Wicca, or even what you just said, into 2021, computers, right? Passwords, we use passwords constantly, right? We're using code. We're using circuit boards that if this is, I originally on TakeBackSpace, I did a lot of the deep dive into gematria and geometric recursion throughout board games and cultural memes. But if you look at circuit boards, motherboards, they're runic symbols. So the way circuit boards are encoded are already incantations written by the companies that make these computers, right? So these computers are performing geometric incantations by operating all day long and emitting cymatic frequencies through microwave radiation and many other things. But I got to tell you, when you watch Eric Dollard and when we watch Suspicious Observers and when you watch catastrophism in general, you go to bed feeling scared. You don't go to bed feeling empowered. And that's really where it ends up for me, right? If I go to bed thinking, oh, gosh, that solar flare is coming for me. This vaccine, oh my gosh, that's going to get me. If I just walk across the street, oh my God, that car is going to, oh my gosh, that guy's going to get me. Oh, damn, that person's going to get me. Man, that must be tiresome. There's no other way to put it for me. It's tiresome. My days are filled with what song, what visual, what new thing can I learn? When can I get online and talk about new ideas? When can I articulate better? What part of the world has not been explored yet? Real new things, novelty. And not the petty novelty, but novelty in the truest sense, because we are fractal capable. Let's see. Protect Yo Neck, Wu-Tang Clan. That is a good track. What's that in reference to? You got a paranormal phenomenon playlist. Love it. Anyway, yeah, so witchcraft is what we're doing right now. We incant, we password protect, we write code, we make visuals, we manipulate people. What is clickbait if not manipulating people through images? That's why I strictly try and not make clickbait, because if people know, this whole idea of pointing at objects that already, the whole idea of thumbnails and clickbait is pure manipulation of the self and of other people. And people flat out admit it. They're like, I want to make this channel popular. Here's more clickbait. And people click on the clickbait. So there's an agreement between the self and other to carry on this game. Smash O Mash says, Ben should start with eyes. No, open fear. I told you, man, I find your stuff kind of quite amusing, to be honest. But yeah, for me, back in 2012, I used to have my whole a group of people. We used to sit down and watch Suspicious Observers together first thing in the morning. I'd force them. I'd say, come on, guys, we got to sit here and watch Ben Davidson because, like, this guy is on his shit. Eyes open, no fear, 4 a.m. And then a few years later, I was like, man, it's exhausting. I feel like shit's going to go down. And shit never went down. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, shit was going to go down in 2012, and then shit was going down in 2013, and then shit was going down in 2015, and then it was going down in 2017. Shit never went down. Shit doesn't go down. What does go down is people spending time waiting for shit to go down is really what happens. People get bored to death, and culture gets blander and blander as people wait for the next terrible thing to happen as opposed to like making the next great thing. If you follow Bucky Fulminster, right? Fulminster. Buckminster Fuller. Bucky Fulminster. Buckster Huckster. Bucky Fullman. All right. Buckminster Fuller talked about you don't try and fix a broken system, you just replace it with something better. That's how things change. Shockwave says, it's not the channel that's clickbait, it's the person behind that content. I don't know. I mean, well, that's not true. I do know. Lots of good people have great YouTube channels, and they also do clickbait. But I will say it's a bit like the pop star thing that's happened, the pop music thing, where the industry made a couple of pop stars really rich, but then they started saying these people are great artists. And so now you have really good singers that want to be famous, that copy the way pop stars sound. And they've destroyed music by doing this. And so I think it's the same thing with writers, movies, shows, and the same thing, I guess, with clickbait, is that good people end up wanting to grow their YouTube channel from a very genuine standpoint, but then they have to use clickbait in order to do it because that has become the accepted form of communication. But it doesn't make clickbait any less, you know, what it is. Charlie Silverman says, the Thunderbolts guy? No, wait. Let me see. I'm missing a bunch of comments. Yeah, so I've talked about it. I was on the Electric View a few times. Talked to Rick a few times, Shockwave here, and Smasho. We chatted a couple of times, once or twice maybe. But I guess my standpoint is that it's fine. Like, there's a lot of people, I mean, Tess included, Tess Mythos Decoded, and Kronos, and Greg J. There is a yearning to not rewrite history in the bad way, but rewrite history or take back history in a way to reconstruct the electric universe paradigm, or a more accurate representation of what happened in the cosmos and in our recent past from 2,000 to 10,000 years. And I'm all about that. I think that's great. Just because I don't want to do that doesn't mean other people shouldn't. Oh, Eugene Bagachev. So Eugene Bagachev is pretty interesting, but I don't know if Eugene is on this, ever listens to this channel, but I've watched a lot of his monologues, and I think he's very, very, very smart. But I definitely have my take on life and the acceptance of things, and there's a certain level of unacceptance of things that comes through with Eugene, where it's things that he disagrees with are very quickly dismissed and not given much thought. And that, I don't know, even for me, and I'm very steadfast in my views, but I'll basically entertain any idea, talk through it, and then dismiss it if I don't like it, or integrate it in some way. In fact, a lot of the answers I give y'all is very integrated. I'll take even relativity or quantum mechanics or religion and repurpose it and reintegrate it into plasma cosmology. Whereas I feel like there are certain things that just end up being their own thing, and they don't have anything to do with, like, for me, telling people exactly what happened 2,000 years ago along a Birkeland filament is less exciting to me than looking at the moon right now and saying, like, what are these geometric shapes? Obviously, that's what I do. But yeah, it doesn't mean everybody else should not reconstruct history. But there are plenty of channels that are doing that. Yeah, Eugene the philosopher. Yeah, I think he's great. Like I said, I just disagree with certain things where it's like, I think, which one was it? There's one where it's about conspiracies. What are conspiracies and how do conspiracies happen? And I'll kind of take the show out on talking about conspiracies and why they're not only 100% real, but they happen all the time. And most things in life wouldn't happen if people didn't conspire to do things. Very simple example is there are probably telephones out there at iPhone, Samsung, that you don't know about. So the board group is meeting with the technology specialist, the head of production, and they're talking about these telephones, these mobile phones or these supercomputers that people have no concept of right now, that they are actively conspiring to develop a product in secrecy, and they're actively conspiring to have a schedule release rollout, and then they're conspiring to sell it to you at a certain type of price. So I love it. As soon as I say the word conspiracy, my internet goes kaput. I'm going to give it a second to adjust. It's coming back. 1 second. They are, yeah. I mean, I don't really want to talk and just spoil this thread. For some reason, my internet just like went down to no kbps. So give it a second here. Yeah, give it a second here. I'm gonna add some more moonage. All right, I think I might be coming back. Let me know if you can hear me better. It seems like it's sort of stopped buffering, but not really. What a weird internet dip. Because like I'm literally sitting on top of the modem and it's connected with the Ethernet cable, so not too sure. Yeah, I don't know if y'all are hearing me, but I hear myself clicking all the way through. Anyway, if you get to hear this, I'm going to try and shut this down and start over. I'm not sure what happened to the connection, but man, it just dropped like crazy. I'll catch y'all really soon. I'm going to try and reboot this. If I don't, I'll see y'all on the next stream, maybe tomorrow or the day after. I think it's going to get stormy, but definitely do a couple more before this moon cycle is through. And then once that is through, I'm probably going to set up on the back porch again. And actually, wait, are we back? I think we might be back. That was crazy. Let me know in the chat if you can hear me again. I feel like now it's at 22. I'm going to grab a smoke. I'll be back in a moment. Put a song here, and let's see if it adjusts. All right, let me talk a little bit here and let me know if you can hear me. It still says red, but there's no buffering going on. That's back at 23 megs per second, so I think y'all are getting the delayed audio now because I stopped typing. Now I'm just talking to y'all. I'll give it a second to catch up. So I see a couple of people showed up while I was going through that. I see rainbows and butterflies, what's happening? And I saw Dr. Ayad Hassan Kamel, what's going on? And let me see. Okay, I'm back, right? Yeah, I think it's stabilized a little bit. Yeah, we went way too deep. We dug too deep in the mines of Moria. Got too greedy. So let's see. I was finishing up talking about conspiracies and how conspiracies exist at every level. They're happening all the time. And I think it was given that I was watching Eugene, the philosopher, talking about how conspiracies are, I don't know, he just seemed very dismissive of conspiracies. And I feel it's not really fair to the fact that there are conspiracies to be so dismissive so quickly. And yeah, he definitely has a little bit of that where he just dismisses certain concepts that he doesn't want to dive into as just untrue or unimportant. And I think when people listen to somebody like him, who's very intelligent and has gravitas, they hear people like him be dismissive. It makes it very difficult to have a discussion about conspiracies when somebody's so dismissive. So that was a take that I had on Eugene, but otherwise I like that he goes into topics like that. I think he's also pretty young, and he'll learn things and learn new things as well. I'm sure he's way smarter than me in a lot of ways. I'm just eating mulberries, blackberries, these giant GMO blackberries the size of like freaking golf balls here. So sorry, I'm chewing in your ear. Right, so phone companies, tech companies keep technology from the masses. Bankers keep things from the masses. Conspiracies happen all the time. So some conspiracies are too far-fetched, and some conspiracies are totally true. And that's really a much more sensible, neutral approach to things than to say that, yeah, you're a conspiracy, blah, blah, blah. That's conspiracy. You said conspiracy, therefore everything you say has no value. I think that's pretty idiotic. So I think that there's some of that going on. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. Pause you pause. So conspiracies like, yeah, the conspiracies that I feel like don't have any grounding in physical reality can be dismissed. But then other conspiracies that do have grounding in physical reality are worth discussing. I know it's a very simplistic take, but it just, we have to baseline this idea, because if you listen or you read the comments on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube channels about conspiracies, people don't even know how to have a respectful and gentle dialogue about complex conspiracies without immediately resorting to ad hominem attacks about a person's character and their background and how they look and who they hang out with versus facts. So Rastaman Lives, here's a great example of a bit of fear porn. I know you don't mean it, but if you're saying something like, you wrote, if you have had banners, your channel is on a list. So this idea of being on a list, on a watch list or a blacklist, or a list that's being spied on, or a list from some agency, right? The implication is that you done something bad and somebody's watching you and you're going to get your comeuppance. And that doesn't happen. I mean, it just doesn't happen. I mean, it's not that it doesn't happen sometimes. It just doesn't happen on a regular basis. The fact of the matter is, you could tell people the truth, and they themselves wouldn't believe it. So, who cares if this channel's on a also, not who cares if this channel's on a list. Obviously, this channel's on the list. I've talked about every single conspiracy imaginable since 2015, but. So in a way, just saying that, right, you unknowingly, I know that you have no bad blood, right? Like, you're not trying to intentionally like frighten me or intentionally be mean by saying if this channel has had a banner, then it's on a list. But you're using rhetoric that we live in this culture where this type of rhetoric, which is like, hey man, you better watch out because there are Secret Service people walking around, men in black. It's the same thing with Santa's naughty and nice list. It's the same with God's list of commandments. There's this idea that there's this other that has it in for you. And for me, that's a given because I'm going to die, right? The whole point is that you're going to die. Therefore, it's been in for you since the get. Since day one, you have it in for yourself. You're actively killing yourself by existing. As soon as you exist, you're actively trying to kill yourself. So, in a weird way, like this idea, not in a weird way, but just it's a perfect example of somebody who, harmlessly is passing on this type of rhetoric of saying like, so think about what does it do if I take what you say at face value and I get off the stream and I say, oh, how do I feel if this channel was on a list that, let's say, the CIA had, a short list of people that actually understood plasma cosmology, or any number of ideas, or maybe that I tell 30 people or 16 people right now some sort of idea that will make them think about something differently. Will I feel good or bad, right? That's the idea. Is, do I get off the stream and say, great, I'm on a list, I should feel paranoid? Or I get off the stream and say, that was a fun stream. And that's kind of the decision, right? Like, not to say that I won't think of your comment now that I've talked about it. But if I imagine that my stream is on a list, it makes me more paranoid. And then it makes me want to stream less, right? It makes me not want to be on YouTube. But if I just accept that no matter what I do, at some point or another, there's some sort of somebody's going to disagree with it. Agency, person, doesn't matter. Therefore, I don't know if I need to absorb or if we need in general to pass around paranoia, And I don't mean to nitpick on you, Rastaman. Honestly, I'm just using what you're saying as a jump-off point. Smasho, you want to do a music collab? Send me something, takebackspace@gmail.com. Send me an MP3 and I'll send you back a layered thing, maybe. Helpy New Year. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, Howie Dunn says social security number, you are on a list since the day you were born. But yeah, I mean, your birth certificate, if you do, what is the name? What was it? Understand the meaning of your name and how the birth certificate has the all-seeing eye and the royal banking family's own social security bonds. We're enslaved at the get. But again, about having a full day, right? A day that was good. A day that was good for me doesn't involve reminding myself constantly that I'm enslaved. Because again, I could be enslaved in this concept, this reality, right? But the fact of the matter is, I've still made a human body from scratch, which means even my death and even enslavement and even the Truman Show and even flat earth and even any idea that you may think is more seductive is not, because making a body and having a moon and playing a song is far more exciting and interesting than any conspiracy. Far more exciting than any death, and far more exciting than any imprisonment, right? You've already made eyeballs. You've made basically unimaginably complicated objects without trying. Yeah, I can't even accept letting you do links for some reason. They've changed all this shit. I'm just going to copy that and put it in my tab. Smash Show. Golden Cat Productions. I'll check that out later, my man. That's cool that you're classically trained. Just scrolling up to see if I missed anything from earlier. Smasho says Eugene is pretty hilarious and bleak. His sense of humor might be unclear. No, I get it. It's just, again, I think we've, Smasho, we actually had that one interaction where I took you to task about goop, I think, was it? And it was less about defending goop, but more so about like directing vengeance or directing mockery where I think it's due versus somebody like Gwyneth Paltrow and Goop, right? Like you may choose to goop it up about Gwyneth, but for me, like I'd much rather explain how like I don't know. I even talk about Thunderbolts Project. I'm like, Thunderbolts should have live streams with their fans, right? It would boost the channel by a lot. Eileen McCusick should hang out with Rupert Sheldrake. That doesn't happen. See the Pattern, Gareth, is so brilliant and does such good work, but his videos are always give me that feeling of contemporary cosmology. Even though he's talking about electric universe, his videos have a sense of forever questioning. It's always a question. There's never kind of this resolve. Even the stuff today with the biomimicry and not biomimicry, but electric mutation of elements that's happened in the Sapphire Project. I just think there's a place that we can just accept that this transmutation of elements happens, and then work from there. To for example, to have tons and tons and tons more content saying, is transmutation a thing? Is it maybe an electrical transmutation thing? Is it something? Maybe? Is it maybe some? And I know that I'm being a little flip, but I don't mean it like that. Even Sapphire Project, for example, like these guys, Monty and Michael Claridge, they've found the stuff. You can work from there. There doesn't have to be this endless thing where no one can ever decide on things, because we just don't have that much time to figure it out. Let's see. All right. I see lots to talk about, many things, but let me know if you have any last thoughts here. Rolling into 1 a.m. I'm glad the show got back on track here. I didn't want to end it on that weird, like, buffering. So, again, I feel like it's going to be cloudy for a couple of nights, so I'm going to finally take a couple of break nights. But this whole run-up from the Great Conjunction till now has been freaking awesome. And thanks to everybody who hung out with me here doing this show. all the kind comments and the great listening ears and, you know, talking about conspiracies. Really don't intend any insults or to put anybody down when I talk about religion or anything sensitive. Of course, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. But, yeah, lol, goop it up. I know, she gets so much, I mean, all she wants to do is sell some face clay and meditation. There's so many more people deserving of mockery than her. You know, that's sort of what it is. It's just like I think it's just people hear this idea, they hear other people mock someone and you jump on the bandwagon. And I just don't behave that way, but other people can do it. It's just not my thing. Yo, Peter Battle, Happy New Year. I was just about to sign off in the next couple of minutes, but I had an interesting chat with y'all. I talked about a lot of things tonight, so definitely jump back if you missed it. Also wanted to give a shout out to Jedi Princess and Rainbows and Butterflies for pointing out and Rick Dangerous for pointing out a transit on yesterday's stream. So if y'all are interested, check out the video from yesterday, New Year's Eve. About 47 minutes in, there's a really interesting, very fast object that looks like it's kind of like tumbling, you know, spinning. But it's not spinning, it's tumbling, really. So it almost looks like the ISS, but I know it's not the ISS. I think it's, I'm actually not sure what it is, but it's pretty interesting. So go check it out. It's timestamped in the comments. I'll probably end up making a video about it, cropping it out. Rainbows and Butterflies, I'm so glad you checked out Eileen McKusick. She makes it all come together. Just totally amazing person and brilliant thinker. Yeah, let me just drop some links in here. Furiously typing. That's Eileen McKusick. And the fractal cymatic patterns that are on her page right now, on her harmonic balancing YouTube page. These are the cymatic patterns that I think our life is encoded within in the etheric plasma around our bodies. Tons and tons of these very complex cymatics that store three-dimensional holographic information about our life. And Mr. Ruperto Sheldrake is right here. So if you really want to support TakeBackSpace, go follow Eileen and Rupert. And yeah, that's it for me tonight. I appreciate every one of you. Thanks for Smasho and Rick and Shockwave for hanging out tonight. Good to see you both. Hope you're having a great start to the year. Shout outs to all the regulars as well, Howie Dunn and Ellie Wynn and Mary Quiet and Jedi Princess, Charlie Silverman and Rastaman Lives and Rainbows and Butterflies, Dandelion and Super Must See and Astralis and Dr. Ayad Hassan and Cyber Sully, I know was here earlier, D. Peterson, Patrick McNellis and Smacking My Lips. Esoteric Gold, July Soul, and that's all I got. Vladius Maximus. All right. If I missed you, you know I appreciate all of you anyway. And I haven't played Hurricane. I'll play Hurricane to take us out here. Catch y'all really soon. It's been a wonderful, wonderful astronomy season. And 21 is going to be crazy. Crazy fun and crazy dangerous. You know it. So have one full day and sleep well, sleep like a god. I trust you all are. I'll catch y'all soon, everybody. This is Hurricane. Or I thought it was going to be. Come on. Where you at? Where are you at? There we go. Good night, y'all.
Don't slow me while you sleep. No way for the ones you left. And I crawl inside you.